Hello everyone and welcome to Tea Talk. This is the more self-centered and millennial side of the conversationalist, where I sit down with a cup of tea, which is one of my favorite things, and process the conversation that I've just had. A big reason that I started the conversationalist was to answer some of the nagging questions that I had in my own life. So questions about politics, social justice, but also about success, finding a sense of professional and personal clarity, things that I was struggling with coming out of college. You know, I'm going to graduate in a year now. So this is a space where I can track my own personal progress through having these conversations. All right, guys, so let's talk about the conversation with Caroline Macfarland. So just giving you an idea of where and when this conversation took place, I'm actually filming this Tea Talk. Gosh, now it's been about 2 months since the actual conversation. So I conducted it when I was studying abroad in London. And Caroline was the founder and the director of a think tank that I interned at while I was in London called CoVi. And by the way, if you haven't watched the actual conversation, I'd recommend doing that before watching Tea Talk here, because there's going to be a lot of things that don't really make the most sense when I discuss them here. So, it was, I think, my second to last day working at CoVi. It might have been my last day. I had asked Caroline a while back if I could interview her for this website that I was starting. I had a very vague idea of what I wanted that website to be, but I knew that I couldn't squander the opportunity to talk to her. So we sat down in sort of like a little alcove in one of the office spaces, and I had questions prepared, and we just chatted for about a half hour. And it was amazing to get her perspective on things, because even though she was the director of the think tank, she is involved in so many meetings throughout the day that my interactions with her are kind of minimal. So it was really nice to be able to pick her brain on things that I've been kind of wondering about the whole time I was working, you know, at CoVi. So I just want to talk about a few specific parts of the interview that really struck a chord with me personally. So one of the best moments of the conversation for me was when I asked Caroline if she ever had a moment in her life where she just realized what she wanted to do, where she realized think tanking is the thing for me, you know? And so this is what Caroline said when I asked her that. There was sort of a moment where it clicked, like, this is what I want to do, this is what I'm good at?
No.
No? Thank you so much, Caroline, for being honest about that. That was such a relief for me to hear her say, because I'm thinking this woman is so successful. Some people I feel like know what they want to do from the day they're born, and I feel about 21 years behind right now, kind of not being sure what I want to do with my life.
I think one issue for sort of a younger generation especially is that we were educated in a world where if you did this degree, or if you did well at school, or if you worked hard at a certain subject or vocation, then this is what you would be, you know, this is what you could expect, this is what you could be rewarded with.
Like a formula.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's a legacy from our parents' generation, where people were much more sort of career focused, and once they got a certain job, they would be in that job for the next 50 years.
Caroline describes that you don't need to have a soulmate job, if that makes sense. Like, you don't need to have a job that you're supposed to have, you're destined to find. There isn't like a perfect fit. You can just be passionate about something and be skilled at it and work really hard at it. And that's really what success is, she talks about later.
Things I'm not even sure it matters, you know, what it is that we're doing, as long as we're, you know, working really hard and enjoying that work is more important.
The idea that it doesn't really matter what you're doing as long as you work really hard at it is the biggest relief for me, because it just proves that you just need to find something, work at it. You can change your mind as long as you're dedicated and passionate about something. And that's something that, you know, most people I think are capable of doing. So it makes this impossible idea of finding a job a lot more manageable, I think, in many ways. Caroline also had a really refreshing take on what success is. So when I asked her, this is what she said.
Is you know, success is being best in field, you know, top of your game. And so again, it doesn't really matter what that game is. But I think that's quite ambitious. Obviously, that's quite a long-term version of success, and I think you can have shorter term success, which is about, you know, putting effort and hard work into something and seeing that paying off. And that can happen, you know, in a really short period of time. And I think that's what probably, you know, helps make longer term success, just picking those, you know, shorter term wins and you know, working really hard at them, and then, you know, building that into kind of a longer term ambition.
Mm-hmm. We also talked about breaking down goals and just, you know, success in general to be more manageable. So if you have a goal, you know, just say it's starting a website, just hypothetically say that's your goal. You break it down into smaller segments. Okay, this is what I'm going to do this week. This is how I'm going to manage like the URL. This is how I'm going to get the content up. And that's how you realize the loftier goal of having like a successful career, successful, you know, venture in that way. Caroline also addresses a healthy balance between idealism and realizing goals and being realistic.
Everyone should hold those, you know, big aspirations of I can do anything that I want to do. But if I put in the hard work now, and I think sort of the Gen Y generation does get accused of being sort of, you know, lazy and apathetic a lot, and I don't want to sort of overgeneralize to that extent, but sometimes I think the way that we've, you know, been taught to do things is to sort of make a goal and then it you know, expect it to happen, when actually it's about, you know, putting in the sweat and tears now.
So she doesn't sort of bash millennials in the way that we typically get bashed by saying that we're lazy and we're unrealistic, but she does say that sometimes we expect hard work to result in a job, almost like a formula. Like we put the work in, we go to school, like there's the job kind of thing. But she says that you need to put in sort of the blood, sweat, and tears into the whole process to get that result. So finally, something that I really wanted to talk to Caroline about was resonance in political issues. That's something that I found very common while I was studying abroad in London. And, you know, granted, the UK, well, you know, England in particular, London especially, is not that different from the United States culturally in many ways. So it's sort of a given that we're going to be experiencing similar political disruptions and issues, and even social issues as well. I found that while I was there, gentrification, housing, taxation was huge while I was there as well, and, you know, the refugee crisis. These are all things that are not foreign to US politics as well. So I asked Caroline for her input on that and sort of how we can address issues in a more global way. And she talks about how many people feel that their opinions and their, you know, troubles, you know, and their experiences that they have are specific to them or to their community, their culture, and how we could benefit ourselves by looking at examples that other countries, other people set in addressing issues that we also face.
Individuals and groups here around the world, you know, that really do think that their own point of view is something which is particular and bespoke to them, and that other people could never ever see things in the same way. And you know, a lot of the work we do, but you know, a lot of the work that's going on elsewhere as well is about sort of convincing people that that's not really possible. We're all, you know, we're all human. So you know, there's always going to be something that we have in common with others, and actually most people's ideals of what a kind of good world is are similar. It's just how we get there that differs, and that's why sort of having those conversations is really important.
So sort of with that more global mindset, I asked Caroline about empathy, and is empathy the greatest political tool? Because something I've always wondered is, can an empathetic person be an effective politician? You know, like, is that job just cut out for someone who is not like a bad person, but just someone who doesn't consider pain that other people are feeling, just because it'd be impossible to make a decision because there's always someone who's getting, you know, the short end of the stick kind of thing. I know that there's no way I could be a politician because of that, because I'd always be thinking, this is going to negatively impact this person, it's going to negatively impact this person. Like, there's always going to be a downside, and that's why I think I have trouble discrediting politicians in a lot of ways, because I think the decisions that they make that I might disagree with, there are going to be tons of people that agree with because it benefited them in a different way than it might not benefit me, if that makes sense. So Caroline, of course, is very well versed in politics, and I asked her about this. And she said that empathy might not be lacking specifically in like the politicians themselves, but that the system might not allow for empathetic interaction in general.
Well, I don't think the politicians themselves would say, I lack empathy and, you know, I'm unable to see it. But I think the system is something which doesn't often create that space to try and, you know, reach beyond your own comfort zone and, you know, see the world from the perspective of others and maybe even have conversations with others who you wouldn't normally speak to. You know, we're set up in a way that deliberately puts people in different categories and in different boxes, and I think you know the sort of conventional institutional ways of doing things are disintegrating for the reason that people don't do it that way anymore. So there's a lot of opportunity to you know, start to do things differently and start to build different ways of interacting and having those relationships and those conversations.
This was interesting to hear from her because I couldn't help but think about the current lack of bipartisanship in the American system and how that might just be built into our, you know, two-party system. And it's something that England is experiencing as well. And so when I filmed this, obviously the EU referendum vote hadn't taken place, but just took place earlier this week. And thinking about the Brexit, that's huge for England. And to think that those issues, you know, they're going through the same sort of political strife in a lot of ways that America is right now. All right, guys, so that was the first Tea Talk. Thank you so much for joining me, and there will be a new conversation out very soon. Thanks for watching.